coming up.
But we have to find those opportunities out of, sometimes, like you said, or the story first of all, out of the miseries and the sorrow of life. If we start seeing them as messages or an integral part of our destiny, then they also happen for us. They are not against us. They are part of the providential stream that comes from the spiritual worlds or dimensions. And they are in favor of us. They are in favor of us in that sense that if you want to become whole, which is another way of saying I'm on my quest for the Grail, then you start looking and you try to explore what it is that can make you whole. Not just only by finding the pleasurable things in life, but also looking at the resistances. And, for example, trouble.
Yes.
But that's the maturity mentality of the quest that the hero has to gradually develop. And not just say, I'm a childish little brat, and I'm just, if everything goes my way, I'm happy. That's the maturity stage.
Yeah. Hello, Synchronauts. How are you? Welcome to another Elysian Roundtable session. Welcome. Hello, dear Mike. How are you? Good
morning to you.
Good afternoon to you.
Or wherever you're on the planet.
Yes, exactly. Wherever you're watching us. Because let me tell you, Mike, here is my dear friend and teacher, Mike Bais from Circle of Avalon. He's in the Netherlands. I am Aida from Mexxicamelot. I am in Mexico. And thanks to the magic of the internet, here we are having this conversation and sharing with you some beautiful pearls of wisdom related to your spiritual school of the soul, which I really like because you have three different traditions coming together, which are Kabbalah and also the myths of the Round Table and the Arthurian, as well as the tradition of the apostolic succession of Arimathea, which is following the path of Joseph of Arimathea. So, and obviously it makes a lot of sense because if you like all of this mythology related to King Arthur, they're looking for the Grail, and where does the Grail come from? It comes from Jesus, no? And well,
Very
there
much.
are many different paths that came through after Jesus. Well, after he transcended and after he had his resurrection. So one of the paths is that of Joseph of Arimathea, and we will be talking more about these kinds of things in future recordings. But it's really nice to see how you bring together all of these in a very concrete and practical way, and looking at it through the lens of the monomyth, as Joseph Campbell described it, of the hero's journey. So we've been talking about it in the past two programs. So this is the third one. We hope to be closing into that. And our point of reference is obviously King Arthur and the story of going on our own quest for the Grail. Like, how do we position ourselves into this mythology? Because something that I do remember from our last chat was that you were saying that we should all have a mythology to guide us through life. No, for example, you were mentioning that my mythology is a Star Wars, and I've been pondering about it because that's one of the many mythologies that I guide myself with, because there are many elements that keep repeating themselves, as we have already talked about in different mythologies, in different stories. But the one that you frame your work on is the mythology of King Arthur and the Round Table, and also the quest for the Grail, which is wonderful. So I'm gonna keep on talking about it today, and I'm just gonna share screen now to remember where we are and what we're gonna be talking about. And so, obviously, thanking the man Joseph Campbell for giving us this very clear understanding of the path of the hero, and we've already been talking about this part of the quest, no, or this part of this journey of the hero, and we are going to be talking today about coming here into the abyss. So I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to recap on, Mike, from what we have been talking before.
Maybe very shortly, that little part there where it says challenges and temptations, for example, helpers and mentors. You know, just for all the listeners, we have just moved into that, or just under the horizontal line where it says the unknown. So that means inwardly within ourselves, within the psyche, you start to explore the things that you do not know. So the intention of the hero is that you want to know things about yourself with the, with really an emphasis on self, which is below actually the horizontal line, that you haven't discovered before. And you find the same things in exploring things within the outside world. So it's a path of renewing.
Okay.
So, for example, from the helmet towards the horizontal line, that's the call to adventure, that first little part there. And that's sometimes also called the way out of suffering.
Okay.
So, you're stuck in life. That's most of the time the reason why the adventure is somehow being introduced to you. And then going into that field or the forest that is unknown to you in your life seems scary, but it is exactly there where we find the solutions to come out of the state of suffering. And we become people of knowledge. That's actually what the hero is looking for. Of course, in particular, self-knowledge. And that may lead to a culmination of experiences that eventually may lead to personal revelations, as it says there at the lowest point on the circle, revelation, and even more than transformation is the way from death and into a kind of a rebirth, like we just had with the Easter symbolism. Yeah. And this can be on any level happening on each person's daily life. So I mean to say that anyone can have a revelation. It doesn't mean that you're immediately enlightened, for example, but you can have your little epiphanies and deep insights coming out of the adventure and the effort and the whole endeavor into your quest. So the revelations are, as it were, tailor-made for you.
Yeah.
The thing is, however, you never know when they're going to come. So yeah, it's also a matter of, you can't predict when these things happen to you. They most of the time they don't come in meditation, for example, but rather they come in moments of interaction with other people and situations within your life, and you notice something has changed, not in the outside world, but in my consciousness and my behavior towards the world.
Yeah.
And it comes unexpectedly, but when you persist on the quest, these moments will happen.
Yeah. Can I just add? I'm sorry. I just want to add a thing which I think is very important, and I'm saying this from my experience in my own quest, because my quest right now is like I don't know what my quest is. So my quest is finding out what my real quest is. But something really interesting that happens when you're going through this search for answers or for yourself or for growth. It could be a search for an awareness, a consciousness, or it could be spiritual in nature. It doesn't matter. Like it could be just psychological, or maybe you can do it in a spiritual way. But when you're going through and the crisis come, and then you have kind of like this dark night of the soul, or big challenges coming to you, you want to push the revelations to come or the resolution to come. No, you want you want to control it, no, and you want to say, no, I will say when this happens and how it happens. And sometimes you want to rush the process, and that's not how it is. So it's really important what you just mentioned, that the revelation or the transformation, they will come when the time is right, not when you want to push it to happen, no? Because the whole
Sure.
process is painful, can be painful, can be uncomfortable, it can be weird. And obviously we don't
Yep.
like, the ego doesn't like that, no? And you're like, no, I don't like how this feels. I want to move from this place. This is not good.
Yep.
Then if you want to rush the process, then it's not gonna, you're just gonna block it more. So I'm just saying this
Exactly
so
true.
that if somebody's going through this kind of process, somebody who is listening to us, uh, like, don't try to
Mm.
rush it. Don't try to like accept it and sit with it. That's something that I've learned from you, and I'm so grateful because that has made a difference in
Mm.
how I am going through my own processes. Because just
Yeah.
like nature, no? Nature has its rhythms,
Yep.
its cycles, so do we. And it's really funny, no? If you compare me a couple of years ago, or even just a few months ago to now, and Mike can
Mm.
tell you because he has seen me, my whole process, no? How I want to
Yeah.
rush things, and no, I have to do this fast. I have things to do.
Hmm.
Life is waiting. I
Yeah.
have to be producing. I have to make money, no? Because that's a
Yeah.
very, like, this is a modern world that is like kind of us, kind of like
Mm.
pushing to be
Yeah.
productive all the time, which is like absurd. So when this moment comes, when we're going through this abyss, or we're going through this process before the transformation, and you want
Mm.
to and make it happen fast and your way, well, let me tell you
Yep.
something. That's not how it works. Things will not go the way you want to go. So the best thing
Law,
to do
exactly.
is
It,
surrender with the,
it's
no?
well, that's whenever we um, like you just illustrated, if we find ourselves on the quest and we still want to um, control the whole process, we know that the ego who rules the known world up there is still
Mhm.
very much trying to be in charge over
Yeah.
the realm of the deeper unconscious of the archetypal realm, but it cannot. So gradually, the hero, which is basically the ego, has to learn that it is not the king of the kingdom. It's not the ruler of the castle.
Mhm.
It's just a servant on the path,
Yeah.
and it's the same with eventually with death. Is the If the ego wants to hold on to life, it has a very tough job going through the transition of death.
Yeah.
So it's the same with the psychological transformation. So the whole path until the abyss is also a preparation for the ego to surrender or to yield, as they say in the Arthurian stories, unto
Mm.
the process itself. And like you just so beautifully said, the trust in that you're not alone on the quest, and there's support from, you know, unseen realms. And
Mhm.
that will bring you much more fluently through that abyss, which is quite scary. It's the deep
Yeah.
unknown. You will come out on the other end um, transformed in whatever thing you don't know. And we have that other picture, Ida, about crossing the chasm or the abyss. If you
Yes.
can just show that to everyone.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. Now, this is a very particular thing. Of course, what we are after, you just said, I don't know actually what my quest is. Well, we have one reminder, and that's the Grail.
Okay.
And of course, that's quite abstract, but that's what basically is the symbol for the quest itself. And that may be different for you than for me. And it may
Exactly.
change over time. So your
Yes.
grail may be to live in harmony with your environment, with your
Mhm.
family,
Mhm.
or it may be a spiritual goal of another kind. It is like completely fitted, tailor-made for your life at the moment. But we have to formulate it ourselves.
Okay.
And here we see that there's actually another form of the abyss. There is apparently not a thing between one end of the rocks and the other. There's a chasm or an abyss in between. This is the difference between the one who crosses it and the ones who fall. This is an act of faith. This is where you cannot rely on anything else than, something greater than yourself. And then where there's no bridge, there is a bridge. And if you're not ready, you may fall. It just simply means you're not ready. And you have to do more, actually, to come to a true transformation within yourself. Yeah. And there are beautiful stories about this, not only in the Grail myth. For example, the one who stands at a huge cliff, and behind a person stands the higher self, teacher. And the teacher says, jump. And the person says, no way. The teacher says, jump. No way. And then the teacher gently pushes the person, falls down, and then wings unfold. This is a particular story that you probably well know. That's basically what this comes down to. Yeah. There's a point in the journey that we cannot go further on experience or on knowledge. The only thing that we have left to do is to trust.
Yes.
And that's the abyss. That would be on the Tree of Life for our viewers who are a bit familiar with the Kabbalah. That would be Da'at.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay.
Which is sometimes also called the abyss.
Yeah, I want to add a little something to what you were just mentioning, because I was listening to Juan Miguel Zunzunegui. I already told you about this. I don't know if I mentioned that on the program, but he was telling also the stories of the resurrection according to mythology. And he said something really beautiful that resonates with what you're saying right now, which is, in this case, for those of us who are in the Judeo-Christian tradition, but it also happens with other teachers, when the teacher comes and tells you, leave everything and follow me, that's part of the quest also. And you have to trust that I'm gonna leave everything, but what if I don't have anything to eat tomorrow? And what if my family never talks to me again? And all of these things come, and we have talked about it before, that this is kind of like the rock like we want to take out our sovereignty, our sword from the stone, and that's the stone. Or that would be the yesod in the tree, like trying to pull us back to the move. It's very cozy in here, but then
that's it.
You have to trust in the process, and it's very hard for the ego, especially when you've had experiences in life when people have betrayed you, or you haven't felt loved or sustained by your own family or your own friends. Obviously, you're gonna have a hard time trusting, the higher. But if the teacher comes, and this is one case, or also, for example, thinking now with about Moses telling the people from like, we have to leave Egypt right now, like leave everything, and what are we going to eat, and God provided,
That's another good example.
So those are the two ones that I can think about right now, when you just say, okay, I'm just gonna trust, and I'm going to yield, as you say, like I'm just gonna surrender, and I'm gonna go with the process. And I think that this is what's happening with this night in particular. It's like nobody told him there was no bridge, because his tour guide or whatever told him, just walk, get the cup, go get the grail, and you might see that there is no bridge, but don't worry, it's just an illusion, because there is a bridge. And and this is what like he trusts, like okay, if my teacher is telling me, and if I can do this, I'm gonna go and do it. So I think that's maybe one. No.
And like the example of the abyss being the point of the art on the Tree of Life, which is actually the Briatic world or the heavenly world. This is you are entering the realm of miracles. That is, of course, from our point of view. So out of the world of the psyche and into the world of wonders. So are you ready to enter that? And again, you see this in many of the Grail stories as well, that there is no bridge, and when one starts walking, all of a sudden there is something like a glass bridge or a rainbow bridge of that kind. And not just in the Grail story, but in mythology over the whole world. This is the same reoccurring theme. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, that's the abyss. It's a new birth. And yeah, that's what the quest has led to. And only when the ego on the quest has found enough of the self, which is also within the center of the whole circle, can one come to a readiness to do this.
Mm.
So the ego cannot do it by itself alone. So you have to find, resonating with heart chakra or Kabbalah your Tiferet, the essence of who you are, that will lead you on to this part. Because the ego cannot by itself naturally connect to something transcendent. So you need the psychological self to do that, the process, and help the ego to move through this stage.
Yes, because the ego is more like the operative system so that we can function in the 3D world. So obviously to take care of our survival. And so obviously it doesn't have it's just like comparing, no? For example, you cannot teach the same thing to a kindergartner than a person who is university level.
Yeah.
So we could say that, no, like the ego is in the kindergarten and the ego just wants to play and no.
Yeah.
So he doesn't, or it doesn't have the capacity to bring you to where you have. So you need the other parts of yourself, because the self is a complicated being. We are not dimensional. So there are different parts of us, and obviously each part of us in our psyche is going to help us with different aspects of how we're going to be interacting with reality. So that makes a lot of sense. No, the ego does not have that capacity because the ego cannot deal with that, but there are other aspects of ourselves who can help the ego through this transition or through these these challenges.
Right. But that's exactly what they are. Something in again in the Grail mythology, which I'm going to cover quite deeply within the course about this in Hawkwood College, is the different examples of at least 4 archetypes who were able to find the Grail and cross this chasm in a figurative way, a psychological way. And they all describe that it can be done in different ways. It can be done by sheer faith. So just believe in something transcendent. But there are other ways as well. The trial and error, keep persisting, falling, standing up again, falling, that's the Percival way. The first was Galahad. Then you have the way of pure devotion and compassion, which is Dindrain, one of the ladies of the Round Table, and so on. So there are different ways fitting to your personality that can bring you to the Grail, but also that helps you to cross the chasm. Wow. And of course, all of these 3 or 4 examples also have their shadow side.
Obviously. Because what fun would it be if we don't have the shadow present to help us and push us, no?
Yeah, that's it. And it makes us stronger if we find out that is exactly the function of it. There's a beautiful story about Percival, who finds the Grail, sees it, and makes a few mistakes and loses it again. So, and then he can't re-find it. He does his best, but he can't re-find it. He's completely desperate about it. He meets his good friend, Knight Gawain, and he says, I'm giving up, this life is sorrow. And eventually they depart, and Gawain says, let God be with you. And Percival says, I hate God. and in this way, in this mood, he enters the forest, eventually comes at a place, a little hut with a hermit. The hermit receives him kindly. he says, have a rest here, have a drink and something to eat. And the hermit notices that Percival is not doing well. So he says, what's your problem, son? And Percival says, I hate and despise God. And the hermit says, well, that's not a problem at all, because God has infinite hate to return to you.
Okay.
And that that triggers Percival to realize that he is a mirror of existence. So as long as he remains in that state, he will only get hate and sorrow back in return. So, that's why the hermit says, if you love God, you will get back exactly that. And that is exactly the teaching that brings Percival back to the Grail. It makes or enables him to cross the chasm.
Wow.
That's just one story. And it may resonate with the listeners at the moment of the program. That there's always a particular way for you to find your essence, to find your Grail, and to cross something that seemed to be impossible.
And I think that there's something important to mention in that sense as well, which I think is very, very important. And this I just realized a few days ago as well, because obviously I'm trying to learn many, many things. When you're on the quest for the quest, you're trying to illustrate yourself. And it's really interesting because sometimes synchronicities bring you to what you want to listen to. But it's beautiful how when you connect with the outer world, and then you come to this that you're sharing, and then you connect and you thread everything. It's like, it makes sense. So what I was listening to was this woman here in Mexico, a psychologist, by the way, and she had been kidnapped by mistake, and she was telling her story, and how hard it was. Like, if you see, some people have the hero's journey like in a very mild way compared to others. Like, because she was completely forced by a very violent situation to go through her own hero's journey. But something that she said, and I think it's important for everybody, I am not what happened to me, because many people who are on a spiritual quest or a quest for awareness, consciousness or growth, sometimes, and that's the stone again, that would be like the yesod. Like, we carry around the things that happened to us, and she could be like, I was kidnapped, and I was abused, and this happened to me, and that's her identity, and she stays there,
Right.
So if we look at the things that happened to us, some of us have gone through some very difficult times.
That's true.
And then you let that, if you let that define who you are, and then you try to go on a quest, that's gonna stop you from going to the quest, because that's just like wait, who was it that what was the example? Who was, I forgot his name, I'm sorry.
Percival.
Percival, yes, because I was thinking Galahad. No, it's Percival. The story that Percival was telling himself was, I hate God and I hate everything because nothing is working and I'm a failure. That's what he had in his mind. I'm a failure. And that's what he was letting define his reality. But then what the psychologist said in her interview was that if I allow this to define me, that's what I'm going to continue, projecting into the world, and that's gonna be my experience, just like with person. But if you switch it and say, okay, this happened to me, I can get an experience out of this, I can transform it, and then I can tell a new story about me, and then I can say, it's not that this happened to me, I survived it, but because of that, now I am a person who is helping other people who have survived such violent situations, that have nobody around them with the expertise that I have. So she's a psychologist, and she made it like that was her grail. Her grail was, I'm going to help other people go through the processes that they're going through, instead of letting that
Yes, exactly. That's the opportunity coming out of finding the grail. But we have to find those opportunities out of sometimes, like you said, or the story first of all, out of the miseries and the sorrow of life, if we start seeing them as messages or an integral part of our destiny, then they also happen for us. They are not against us. They are part of the providential stream that comes from the spiritual worlds or dimensions. And they are in favor of us. They are in favor of us in that sense that if you want to become whole, which is another way of saying I'm on my quest for the Grail, then you start looking and you try to explore what it is that can make you whole. Not just only by finding the pleasurable things in life, but also looking at the resistances. And for example, trouble.
Yes.
But that's the maturity mentality of the quest that the hero has to gradually develop, and not just say I'm a childish little brat and I'm just if everything goes my way I'm happy. That's the maturity stage.
Yeah, definitely.
So the abyss is basically, it seems to be dark and full of chaos, but it is exactly there at the midpoint where we find on the hero's quest. There we go. We find the Grail, and that's a very crucial point. Also, in the example of your story of that lady, because when you find the Grail, then a completely new life starts. Sometimes they say with the finding of the Grail, then life starts. Before that, yeah, exactly. And there's a choice. Or you intend to come full circle. You go home. You come where you came from. Because you have received the boon or the treasure. But there are also examples in stories and in daily life where people say, I have received this great gift of the spirit and I'm going to keep it for myself. And that's a possible problem there that arises. It's a choice at that very moment. These are, for example, moments. One of the greatest examples is Yeshua in the desert. He's being tempted by Satan. He can receive he has found the Grail there. Well, you can have all the wealth or power in the world. Same happens to Buddha when Mara approaches him under the Bodhi tree. All the same kind of thing. And it can happen to ourselves in our own personal way.
Of course. And what it's important to, and I really want to make a big emphasis on this, is that it doesn't matter what has happened to us. Something that is going to help us very much in our quest is if we leave behind those stories, we don't let them define us, and we write a new story for ourselves. And when you do that switch, just like Percival did, then you're going to be ready to receive the Grail or to contact the Grail. But if you keep on telling the same old story and you victimize yourself, and then you're like this child, as you say, throwing tantrums because things are not going your way, you're never going to get there. So you need to say, okay, this happened to me. It doesn't have to define me. I will not let it define me. I am more than what happened to me. I am more than my situation. I can change. I can move. That's something that is also very important to say, because many people say, oh, I'm never going to change. I've always been this way. And we use these excuses to not move, no? So why not take these examples? I've just mentioned a real life example, apart from the mythologies that we're talking about, to say, well, what if I start telling a different story starting right now? What if I start changing the way I see myself and not let these things define me? I can redefine myself. I can just go into the abyss to renew myself and then become who I really am, not what society has told me that I should be, or my story, what has happened to me, but who I truly am in my Tiferet, would say, no?
No, that's completely true. And that's what Campbell would say. you move from a mechanistic way of life into a much more fluent and organic way of living, which is in accord with the spirit. But if we have completely given our lives to society only, to the man-made world, which is mechanistic, then we can almost not realign and attune again with spirit, with the essence of our being. And that can only be retrieved, as it were, and relived if we go through that abyss. And if we come out rightly and we don't want to keep it for ourselves, so if everything goes well, you realize that this hasn't happened for me as a person only, but I am here in service of life.
Yes.
And then you come to that stage of atonement, or you could say at-one-ment. You find, yeah, it's like a realigning of a new spiritual life with your life in, daily living, with your family, with your friends, because that hasn't changed most of the time.
Yeah.
There may be some changes there, but maybe you have the same job, you have the same brothers and sisters, but you change. And then there's the at-one-ment or realignment with your daily life. And that's very important, because otherwise the whole journey itself, the hero, is only an inner adventure. But now it is realigning with objective reality as it is. And that, of course, is of vital importance, because then you manifest your own inner experience and you serve the world through it greatly. That's the atonement. Atonement, by the way, is also an important feast that is being celebrated in many traditions, like Yom Kippur in Judaism. So it's an initiation where you go from one stage of development and consciousness to another, like baptism, etc. So that's not just something that happens to us, but it's also a conscious effort that we have to make. So this new life, this new way of living, how do I align it with and attune it with the life that I'm living? So that's of great importance before you can come full circle.
Okay.
And that happens to all the heroes on the quest, whether it's Odysseus or Jason or many others that I don't know. I don't know all the myths of the world, but they have to come back eventually and bring back the Grail or the Golden Fleece or the silver bone, and they bring it back to the world. Yeah.
Okay.
And the return, there's the gift of the goddess. So she is in many stories the entity of wisdom, so to speak, that has overseen the whole process. She is the great mother who is always there.
Yeah.
And for the one who is aware of that, of course, she can aid at crucial points. She comes to you and gives you crucial advice. So again, she can come in any form, as the great fairy godmother, for example, or she is Kundry on the Grail quest, which is like an old hag. But don't be confused about these things, because she can be a beautiful young woman or an old witch, but she always has the same function.
Okay.
Always bringing us back when we go astray, bringing us to the straight path.
Okay. And then
so the return of the goddess can be a message, but it can also be like a true gift that you receive in daily life. Some people said, I found a book, for example, and it has changed my life. So it's very concrete.
Okay.
And with it, you enter again into the circle, but now renewed, because it's not a, you said this, I think in our other program, this goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And then you can see the circle as a spiral eventually.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Where you move out of something and you're actually spiraling up, culminating to a certain point of which is called the center of your being or your essence.
Kind of reminds me of the principle of a labyrinth, no? Like,
Exactly.
I really like that idea. Many years ago, I went to two cathedrals actually that have big labyrinths. One is in Amiens, and the other one is Chartres, which is like the most
Gotcha.
famous one, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know who told me, if it was there, I don't know, but I came to the information that our lives are like going through that. It was somebody in the cathedral that explained that to us. Now I remember. I think that was in Amiens, because my mother actually started like the labyrinth was just there and it was empty. In Chartres, it was full of chairs, unfortunately. I don't know why they do that, but well, in Amiens, she went into like nobody told her. We were just there. And she got inside the labyrinth and she started walking the labyrinth.
Yeah.
And then other people started joining her because we were there and nobody thought like, hey, let's do that. No, she started doing it. I was just watching this time around. And then somebody told us, this is like life, because at the center is God, no? And if you look at the labyrinth of Amiens, it's like, it's not circular, but it's more like in lines. So at some points when you're moving, sometimes you go very close to the center and then you go away and then you come back. That's how it until you actually reach the center. And that's when you come back to God and your essence, I think. So you could also compare this idea of the hero's journey and our connection with divinity like that. No, we incarnate and we start going through the maze, no, or we start going through the labyrinth until at some point we come back to God, no, or come back to creation, come back to ourselves.
But that's really one of the greatest metaphors for the journey, and you can say that the ego in general only enters the labyrinth, but never tries to penetrate to the core of it. So it's always on the surface of life, like swimming in an ocean, but never dives into the deeper waters, always swimming in the shallow waters, keeping the head up for oxygen. But again, the labyrinth is famous, especially also, for example, in Greek mythology. And the king hides the greatest, purest thing within the center, because then it will never be found, because humanity is not in search for this. You see, only a few, and they persist again, and then eventually the labyrinth becomes a pure circle. There is no, there's no confusion anymore. There are no secrets. You have discovered through exploration the whole maze, so to speak, of life.
Wow,
exactly.
That is super, super interesting. There's I just want to move a little bit in the presentation because I don't know, just to finish. I don't think we really talked about this. Just if you want to close, we want to close this session talking about
No,
this.
ask me. No, ask me. Of course.
Yeah, because we didn't really talk much about it, and I'm just like, okay, what do you mean by this? The mythological encounters in daily life. Because I think that's important, and that's something that you will be talking about also in your course in Hawkwood, right?
Oh yeah, majorly. I mean, it's the best way to for any person to really come to a self-conscious idea of in what process am I at this very moment, and to what part of a myth do I relate at the moment? Where am I going to? So yeah, because the archetypes, they speak to us in ways that the normal daily consciousness, of thoughts and cognition cannot. So, for
Yes.
example, here we have a very romantic picture of Merlin, the mage,
Wow.
and
He was a good-looking guy when he was young.
exactly, yeah, I'm still jealous there, but well, what he did behind us a tower. This is a good example that everyone can relate to. It's a long story, so I will keep it as short as possible. But
Mm,
there's a king who has built this tower, and but the foundation of the tower does not hold, so the tower collapses all the time.
mm,
And his astrologers, his wise men don't know why it's happening. So one of them, in a kind of desperate mood, says, "Well, because otherwise, it will cost his life if they don't come up with a good solution. We have to offer the blood of a young child whose mother is a normal human being, and the father is actually a devil. And they go in search for this boy, and they find it at Bala Lake, which is a real place geographically in the north of Wales, in Snowdonia. And his name is um, Merlin of Merdwin in Old Welsh. And they take him. Of course, he has no choice. Back to the king, and the
mm,
king says, "Well, son, I'm sorry, but we have to take your life." But even at that stage of around 9 or 10 years old, Merlin is already as wise as decades or hundreds of years old, I want to say. And he says, "Well, he says, I will, if you give me just a little time, I will show you the real reason why the tower doesn't hold." And he takes the king into a cavern below the castle, and there are two dragons sleeping. But occasionally, when they wake up, they start fighting. They are each other's opposites. And he says, "We have to free them, and then the ground will be stable again."
mhm.
So they are being released, and the dragons fight. The one is red, as you can see. The other is red. Um, And what this, for example, can mean in esoteric teaching is that if you want to build a tower, for example, is the metaphor for your own body. If you haven't got your vital soul or your kundalini, so to speak, your life force in check, and you can't direct it properly through your vessel, it shakes the foundation of who you are, and
Mhm.
you will know it because it disturbs you all the time. You can't really build something concrete within yourself. Physically, it may disturb you, but also psychologically. So the tower is your whole being, you see?
Mhm.
So what needs to be done is that the power has to be freed in a um, responsible and wise way,
Mhm.
which is done, for example, in Kundalini Yoga through the chakras, etc. Um, Now, this story has many different layers and can be used as such, also in different practices of meditation.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, this is one example. and
Okay. So
and you
then,
can see it from the perspective of Merlin, but also from the king. If we are the king, I
mm,
try to control everything. I want to
mm,
control my life. I want to
mm,
build my life on a mechanical idea of the world,
mm,
out of fear, for example, or out of anger. And those are not the right emotions to build your life upon, or to
yeah.
build a kingdom for that matter, even. And we may all relate to that in our lives, to that king
Yes,
as well. Yeah.
definitely. Okay. Wow.
So,
I didn't
mm,
I didn't know. I mean, I've heard about the story, but I didn't know like now that you compare, no, like okay, but what does it really mean, no? In terms of our human experience? Ah, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, exactly. And that's the art of reading the myth.
Hmm.
That is, how do I translate the language of mythology, the archetypal world, which is the same as our dreams. How can I interpret my own dreams in a way that they make sense and become a source of wisdom for my life?
Okay. Wow. That's really
And so yeah, sorry, the myths have a solution for everything, so to speak.
Ah, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that
Mm,
they serve a purpose after all, no? Actually, I was
mm,
listening to Joseph Campbell a clip a few days ago, and he said that there are four different elements to why the mythology exists, and the fourth
yeah.
one that he mentioned is that he's actually like mythology gives us these guidelines to live in society even. So even though they
Yes.
might
Yeah.
be very fantastic stories, there's
Mm,
actually important information there for us to be guided on how do we live our daily lives. And it doesn't matter if we were living in times of Merlin, no, so to speak,
no,
or if living in modern times, these archetypal stories still have a lot of relevance to what we're going through as a humanity. So it's
that's
good
it.
to look back at them as guidelines. No, it's not mythology is not fact. These are
No,
stories like the parables of Jesus. No, they're meant to give us. There are pearls of
mm,
wisdom here if you know where to look and what to look for.
yeah, a myth is something that never happens, but happens all the time. So it's the wisdom of the ages. It's timeless. But again, if we translate it or see it as a fact, we are in trouble. And then it fossilizes into just a story, and
Yes,
that's a shame.
and it could be
Mm,
even dangerous because that's what happens with religions. No, it fossilizes, as you say,
mm.
and then people are
Yeah,
obsessed with it, and you have to do it this way, and then all the power and all the importance of it gets lost in translation, so to speak. So yeah, that's a shame when that
yeah.
happens.
Oh
Definitely.
yeah, no, it has brought us in many different problems and conflicts. Yeah, majorly. Yeah, and that's just the whole idea behind the course as well. How do I learn to read the myth and
Hmm.
see it at its own level, which is the psychological level, not the historical level. Um, but like you said, it has an effect on the factual world. It has a pedagogical function as well. For
Mm.
example, the whole idea about Camelot. How do I manifest a kingdom? My house here with my people. How does that become a kingdom in metaphor? Which is based upon higher principles and ideas.
Hmm.
How do I establish that instead of
Yeah.
just living your life in your house and going to work? But
Yeah, like a
what are my
zombie.
values? Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And
Right.
then it's not only just a psychological process, but it becomes something tangible and it
Yeah,
becomes a
something
practice.
practical. Yeah, that's it.
Very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing the presentation now and just
Wonderful.
could you tell us just before closing our conversation for today, what can people expect from this course that you're going to give? Besides what you just mentioned right now, what else are you going to
Yeah.
be exploring?
Um, well, I'm going to explore a few examples of mythology. We talked about much the round table, but I will give other examples as well, just to show the universality of the world of myth.
Mhm.
We will be going through some theory, which is very easily to understand because it is, immediately relatable to your own life. And
Okay.
we will do small practices all the way, not difficult things, little meditations or even little practices like drawing the sword from stone,
Mm.
which we have explained earlier on, is one of those practices. So it will be a continuous, um, you know, uh, going from theory to practice, and at the same time, lots of interaction. I love to hear the stories from people because that is, most of the time reason to go further into certain things, and it will help other participants as well to share, and because it's a living thing, the whole world of mythology, and then we can come closer to aid everybody in the idea of what is my mythology, what is my story. And that's what I want to work towards. If people go home, they have a feeling, I know where my myth is, where my story is, and where I'm supposed to go. So to have real tools to return in the real world. So we are really going on the hero's journey on the course. Yeah.
That sounds interesting. And I think that when I've participated in these kinds of gatherings, sometimes it all tends to be very magical, because it's like the people who have to be there will be there. No, it's like our souls decide before meeting, and we're there to help each other as a group. This is not like an individual. Well, it is an individual quest, but we're going together. No, each on our own paths.
Yeah, it's both.
No,
yeah,
but we're not alone. And I think that it's important to say that, no, that you're going to create a little community for the duration of your workshop that's going to transform lives, definitely. So synchronous, if anybody is feeling the call to go, please do it, because one thing is to be talking about the mythology like we are right now, but another thing is to go and experience it through different exercises and with other people, and see how it relates to your own personal life. So that will be really, really a great gift to your own soul and to your own process. And so just let's close today's conversation, Mike. What would you like to say as a closing argument? No, like your final thoughts on what we have been talking about in these past few programs related to the hero's journey.
Well, just apart from what we talked about the course, but I understand, of course, most listeners will not be able to go to the course, is that if you still have any questions, you can always reach out to you through the program or personally to me, and I can answer any questions. I hope so, at least. I will do my best. But it's so important that what the message of the myth here is, that if you really want to live your life, you have to go in pursuit. Nobody else will do it for you.
Yeah.
And secondly, which is entangled with this, if you are looking for happiness outside of yourself, you may find some of it, but the true happiness, the grail, is always within you. And that is what I really would like to say as a last message there to everyone.
Okay, that's really, really important to take into account. And also, just a reminder, like, you're writing a book about these topics, right? It's like a bit in a pause, but you've been working on it, right? So if you can't make it to the course, eventually you're going to release a book talking about these things, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you for mentioning it. Yeah, I've put something in the fridge, a little manuscript there, because I'm writing a beginner's book about Kabbalah for Watkins. We talked about this Watkins bookshop in London. But after that, we are going to work on the manuscript, which is Kabbalah and the Quest for the Grail, which will be covering all of this. It will be, of course, very much directed towards the Holy Grail myth. Nevertheless, it will be enough to have an idea what this is all about. Yeah. But I cannot say when that is going to be published, but through Facebook and social media, I will keep everybody posted.
Yeah. Speaking of, can you remind us where people can contact you on your social media, please?
Yes, of course. That would be or through Circle of Avalon page, but they are connected, mikebais page on Facebook. You can also find me on Instagram under the same names, but mainly on Facebook. And otherwise, send me an email on mikebais@rocketmail.com. It's very fast mail, but don't worry, Rocketmail is Yahoo, so then you know. Or you can have a look on my website, which is Circle of Avalon, one name.nl.
Yeah,
and have a look at all the things that I'm doing.
Yeah, so if people want to buy your books, or if they want more information about this workshop, they can contact you
Yes.
directly, or if they have their own questions, of course, they can contact you
Yes.
directly. And very soon, when we have more news about your book with Watkins, we will also be talking about it here in the Elysian
Yes.
Roundtable. So there is
Yeah.
much to talk about, much to discuss. So Synchronauts, if you have any questions, or if there's any topic that you know that Mike knows about and you would like to us to talk about it here, also you can send us a message or put a comment here on the video. If you're watching us on Facebook, please remember to like and to share. If you're watching us on
Yeah.
YouTube, please remember to subscribe to the channel and to click on the little bell so that every time that we have a new video coming up, then you can listen to what we're doing. And right now, because things have gotten a bit quiet on some ends for me and for Mike, we're gonna be making more of these videos a little bit more often. So expect to see a little bit more about this conversation. So thank you so much, dear Mike, for sharing your knowledge
Very
with us.
welcome. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time and effort.
It's my pleasure because I'm learning so much, and I think that this is worthy of sharing with the world. And also, Synchronous, thank you for being here and for checking out what we're doing. So we'll see each other very soon. In the meantime, take care. And now you have all of this information. Where are you going to go now on your own hero's journey? Let us know in comments. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.